Obviously, this move is a bit more difficult where he's getting Eddie to try to keep the shoulder joint rotating, well, and the elbow joint, but mainly focusing on the shoulder joint at the same time turning from his center. So sort of like the Chum Q or the Biu Ji pivot and side slash. And Eddie's side slash, the first one was good. You can see he's using the rotation quite nicely, he's staying quite connected, but on impact with Sigong's arm, the rotation was stopping. And that usually is what happens. Like, again, in the forms, maybe we can do it, and even in Chi Sao, we can do it quite well. But to do the most difficult way of doing it is from not being in contact to getting into contact, and retaining that while you impact with the opponent's arm or with the dummy's arm or whatever it may be. That's why the dummy is a very good practice for this, because you're not in contact and then you suddenly in contact. So to work on the junju or the activity of the joint in the dummy is a very good one for that. Realistically, in a fighting situation, in a self-defense situation, of course, you're not going to be touching the person first and then you come in contact with them. So we need to be able to have it on before and then ensure we can keep it on through the contact, and continue to keep it on under pressure. Yeah, so Eddie's actually quite good in this condition, in this stage of his training, with being able to rotate the shoulder joint correctly and the elbow joint correctly, and his pivoting is not bad as well. So there's 3 points, let's say, the center, the elbow joint, and the shoulder joint, and he can individually rotate them nicely, you could see there, but to do them all 3 of them together at the same time is very difficult. That requires a higher level of Nim Tao to be able to coordinate and activate all those joints simultaneously while under pressure. So you saw for Sigong there, as he turned here, there was no compression in the joints. So these ones were able to keep their open condition and keep their junju, keep the movement, keep the activity as the center was turning. In effect, there's an acceleration point from here, moving the mass, and within that entire mass movement, there's an acceleration point here, and there's an acceleration point here. So at least 3 points of acceleration while the mass is all connected. Therefore, the power is great with little effort. Yeah, so they're separate movement but coordinated simultaneously. And you see now he's trying, that's what used to happen with us when we couldn't do something, and Sigon was working really hard to get us to do it. Our attention would usually go to the place that he was touching or telling us to, or instructing. In this case, his shoulder and a little bit his center. But you can see now his stance has changed a little bit. His stance, like the backside isn't relaxed, the hamstrings isn't relaxed. Therefore, the lower back, the lumbar curve, isn't active in the way that Eddie can usually activate the lumbar spine. Which means then if he pivots from his center, there's not much mass coming through the torso, or the entire torso is not connected with the legs, so there's not much mass coming through. Therefore, it's not a holistic movement. Like the first movement he did in this video was a lot more holistic than what he's trying to do here, even under the instruction of Master Choi. So that's what happens, when we overthink and we were try really hard to do it, then the other aspects of the good aspects or control of different parts of the body goes away. So it must be ultimately we practice, and ultimately it just becomes effortless, holistic, and quite natural. It feels quite natural and effortless, and there's not so much hecticness with the intention. ，So if you have a look at his legs there, and he did move his body nicely. The back is straight. This is quite open. But yeah, the legs are certainly inactive. At this point, if someone went up to him and pushed into his thigh, he would have to go backwards because the hip joint and lower back isn't active. That's what I was talking about before.
都幾艱難㗎，好似好易咁樣用嘅。我咁樣成日隻手用咧，而家都有好大力㗎嘛，咁樣揈埋去，非常艱難，唔係都幾艱難，非常艱難。
And that's what he said. He said if you just fling the arm, like if you swing it like with momentum floppily, it's still powerful because it's traveling a long distance, the arm. It's got time to build up momentum, and you can sort of do that sort of system whipping method of movement. It's still powerful, no doubt. If it's not in contact and you're hitting something, it's still powerful. But that way of movement, if you hold that person's arm, the person that's performing that way, if you hold their arm and put their joint under pressure before they move, they will find it very difficult, so because that method requires some time or some distance, even if it's just a few centimeters, it still requires some distance to build up momentum and get that whipping effect. So therefore, under immediate pressure, it's not very powerful.
轉呢下其實真係講就易，因為你真係要熟習咗，控制得好熟先得。如果唔係用唔到嘅，控制到若無其事咁樣，好。你首先個膊要好鬆，要鬆，要好鬆。綁住我個膊。咁如果我呢個而家鬆嘅，我呢個一轉得要轉，你就點樣你發力，你就好難綁得人，人哋拱唔入嗰條橋㗎。你拱住我，如果我唔做唔到轉，你而家拱住我咁樣俾你轉正啦。但係如果我呢個轉你開始就會有。
So you see, so that interconnectivity that I was talking about is key. That interconnectivity is key. And you can see clearly, I mean, that's good because this guy's not being very compliant. And Master Choi is just moving very lightly. He's not putting too much power into it. But you can see the difference in when he was doing it wrong, demonstrating wrong, and when he interconnected the body together through the openness of the joints and through the Nim Tao. You can see the effect on the guy's body when he does it correctly. So this is the wrong way. Nothing enters. And in fact, all of this guy's force now is entering, basically, if this guy walked forward now, Sigon will just spin. You know, he's not he wouldn't be able to stop him from coming in. But then see the change of force and the change in the play of force when he puts it on. Just try to see if you can see the difference.
俾你轉者啦，但係如果我呢度轉呢度轉，你開始成個人浮，成個人浮嘅喎，呢度轉呢度，重心比較要成個人浮嘅喎，呢個
浮嘅原因都係你裏面轉，所以我頂唔住你。
頂唔住。
如果你純身體轉嘅話，
頂得住。
你純身體嘅力量。
啊？
即係好當係一齊轉啊！
你明唔明我講分開係咩嘢？明。係獨立轉，即係我呢度轉就唔關呢度事，呢個教字唔關呢度事，啊，即係獨立轉，分開轉。即係一唔手。即係唔好話我一齊咁樣去轉，咁樣轉到。
So that's a very important point, you know, that you got individual control of each joint, but they are interconnected. They are internally connected, and therefore they are independently moving. Like you said, you push on his arm, it doesn't affect his center. If you push on his center, it doesn't affect. You push on his elbow joint, it doesn't affect his shoulder joint. So sort of like that, you got individual control of the joints, but they are interconnected. And they move, you with your Nim Tao, you coordinate it. So they move all at the same time, not 1, 2, 3, like that girl was saying. It's all at the same time.
咁啊，嗰個腦好難操縱喎，分開轉咁講下嘅啫喎，要你個腦操縱得到先得。
Effectively, what that meant is what I just said. So he said, you know, be careful so don't just go home and try to think, okay, my shoulder, I'm going to work on that for 2 months, and then now my center, you know, it's actually in reality when you're doing the Chum-Q form, even doing it slowly, you think about a pivot and side slash, there are many joints turning, and you know, so once you have the Nim Tao and your mind is infused in the body, and you use your mind to pivot and side slash, all the joints are moving. You can witness and observe the joints moving all at the same time, but individually. And you can use your Nim Tao to accelerate a few joints even more consciously, you know. So it's actually all about the Nim Tao. It's very hard to understand this or try to fathom it without having experienced Nim Tao, because the thinking part of the brain, as we've said so many times, cannot control the body in this way, and it's just going to control them. It's going to lead to muscle activation, which then disturbs everything, disturbs that interconnectivity.
識轉都好難，唔好話分開轉。
咁嗰個好轉啊！我淨係唔分開轉，我想咁轉，即係就算我掹晒做晒都得，我擺咗喺呢度，我放鬆咗呢度，我個中間一轉，佢好難企得穩嘅，佢隻手夠你，但係你企唔夠你啦。
唔係你頭先講個腰嘛？
係啊，中間轉。就唔翻話靠條腰力咁扭嚟轉，我好似冇嘢。
一般人都係用個身體個力量嘅中間嚟
即係頭先咁樣嗱，即係而家頭先我咁樣轉咧，你呢度捧住我，呢度掹住我啦，咁啊即係咁樣啦。咁如果我用腰馬轉，你知道我條腰發力，咁啊轉唔喐嘅。咁唔夠你轉嘅，咁如果我擺鬆晒，乜都你話冇乜我符喎，你有靚女嘅事嘅喎，就係咁樣。你又想出嚟唔俾我喐啊？你又冇乜仲揀住。
如果人哋係抱起咗你離咗地咧，咁你
抱唔起嘅，
抱唔起嘅，即係個重心我嚟下墜好犀利。
That was a good question. The guy said he just wanted to, when Chu Shong Tin said, "Yeah, I don't use the connection to the ground and stuff." I would always ask such questions as well. What if you're suspended in the air? And his answer here was, in a realistic situation, you can't even lift me. Even if you do lift me, he can drop his weight where you can't carry him. You go down to your knees, or you have to let him go. But there is still mass, even if he's suspended in the air. There is still mass. There is still he would still weigh the same. Okay, so he can tap into his center and utilize his joints in such a way that he would still be able to turn from his center and produce power. You know, and this is very hard to again understand and believe. And we talk about when he would stand on the board with the four wheels, and we would push on him, and we couldn't move him. So and we're thinking, well, where the hell is the force going? Any of us would try without him setting us up. Even with him setting us up, when we would go on that board with the four wheels, not like a skateboard, the wheels could go in any direction. The wheels were connected to the board with a pivot thing, so they could go in any direction at any time. It was very difficult to keep balance standing on it, let alone taking force. And he could do it, but we couldn't. So that was his way of showing that, yeah, he's not using the connection to the ground. But yeah, with the guy's question, we said, what if you were in the air? I did ask him that question before, and he would say, look, if I had to punch something when I'm in the air, if I was suspended, I'd be able to get a lot of power because I'm moving my mass and utilizing my joints, and therefore mass times acceleration equals force. The problem is that we, generally speaking, can't tap into our mass on the ground while our feet is connected to the ground, let alone if we're suspended in the air. And that's why sometimes in seminars and things I demonstrate by jumping straight up and down. So without pivoting the body, I just jump up. As I jump up, I punch while I'm in mid-air, whether on the way up or on the way down. I punch, and I can get the same power pretty much as my normal sort of straight punch if my feet are connected to the ground. So that's my way of showing that I can, while being in air, I can still tap into my mass and send it out to the target. So here is just a bilgy elbow.